Coach's Corner is your source. Baseball, football, soccer, and hoops. The Coach's Corner has the scoop. It's the Coach's Corner with Andy.
Covering Tri-State sports, it's the Coach's Corner with Andy on 92.1 The GOAT.
It's the Coach's Corner.
Welcome back to the Coach's Corner, and it is time to make our picks for Week 12 of the NFL. But first, we're going to recap Week 11. Now, usually I have Tim with me to do this, but Tim is on vacation, and I'm not going to make him call in from vacation and make picks, even though it would only take like a half hour of his time. But nonetheless, enjoy the vacation. We'll have him back next week to recap. He did still text me his picks over, so I'll go over who he actually picked. We'll still preview the games, and we'll still recap Week 11. Let's start with the Thursday night game last week. The Washington Commanders traveled to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Tim and I both picked the Eagles to win, which they did get a victory against the Commanders. The Commanders fell apart towards the end of the game. A lot of injuries on the Commanders side. Hopefully they can get that shored up before Dallas week coming up. And the Philadelphia Eagles took a 1.5 game lead over the Washington Commanders in the NFC East. So that's a positive for them. We'll see if they can continue their winning streak coming up this week. The next game on the docket was the Green Bay Packers in Chicago taking on the Bears. This one came down to the wire. Chicago lost again. Green Bay got the victory. It was, I think the game was by a point. So it really came down to the wire. Field goal was missed by the Bears to lose the game. Tim did have Green Bay winning by 20, but unfortunately that didn't happen. He was wrong, as usual. Jacksonville took on Detroit in Detroit for the next game up. Detroit absolutely wiped the floor with Jacksonville. I think that's kind of what we all expected. I believe the final score was, I think Detroit put up 52 points on Jacksonville. We both picked Jacksonville to win that game. By the way, Tim and I both picked Green Bay as well to win that game. The Detroit game was picked for Detroit as the winner from Tim and I as well. So far, we're both 3-0. The next game up was the Raiders in Miami. We both picked the Dolphins to win, Tim and I, and the Dolphins did come out victorious. The Los Angeles Rams versus New England Patriots. Tim picked against this team, and it worked out for him this week. The Rams got a victory over the Patriots. I picked the Patriots to win. Obviously, they did not. The Cleveland Browns took on the New Orleans Saints for the next game up. I picked the Saints to win, and Tim picked the Browns. The Saints did get a victory there, so I got a victory as well. The Baltimore Ravens took on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one kind of shocked me. Tim and I both picked the Ravens, and because Pittsburgh obviously got the win. We said it was going to be a close game, 17-14. It was actually almost pretty accurate. But Tim and I both picked the Ravens there, so we both got a loss on the week for that. Minnesota versus Tennessee. Tim and I both picked Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota won that game. The Colts versus the Jets. For some god-awful reason, I picked the Jets to win, and they clearly didn't. That organization is falling apart more than they already have. Tim picked the Colts to win on that one, so he got the victory on the game for that. Next up was Atlanta taking on Denver. Tim swore he wouldn't pick Denver due to Bo Nix. Not a big Bo Nix fan, but he should have picked him here because Denver got the victory over Atlanta. Tim picked Atlanta to win. I picked Denver. I got a victory there. Seattle took on San Francisco. I don't think anybody saw this one happening. Seattle got a last-second win on the shoulders of Geno Smith, getting the victory over the 49ers. Tim and I both picked the 49ers to win that game, so we lost there. Next game up was Kansas City and Buffalo, and Tim and I both called this. We said Buffalo would be the team to upset Kansas City and cause them to not go undefeated for the season, and that's exactly what happened. Tim and I both picked the Buffalo Bills to win, and we got a victory there. The Los Angeles Chargers took on the Bengals in Los Angeles. Tim and I both picked the Bengals. We called it a rebound game for the Bengals. It was exactly the opposite of that. Even though Joe Burrow is playing elite, the whole team together just can't seem to get a win. It seems to fall apart every time for him. Bengals got the loss there. The Chargers got the win. Tim and I also got the loss. The next game up was the Texans and the Cowboys, and Tim and I both picked the Texans to win as they did. So we got a victory there. Now, we did technically tie in picks at both going 9-5. The tiebreaker went to Tim, though. He had 38 total points for the game. He was the closest, saying that Dallas would score 9 of them. So Tim won the tiebreaker and won the week for that. Overall, through week 11, Tim is 61-27. I am 63-25, still in the lead. And I can say that because he's not here to bash me about it. But that was week 11. And we're going to get right into week number 12 coming up. So let's get right to it. Get my picks here for us. And the first game coming up is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. Tim did text me in his picks. I'm going to go over each game here like we usually do. He's just not here to banter back and forth about it, which is it a bad thing? No, I'm kidding. Maybe. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we both picked to win this game against the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have had a rough season so far. They're the bottom of the AFC North. Pittsburgh is at the top. But this could be a trap game. This could be a game where Jameis Winston possibly shows up, plays really well. They still have Nick Chubb in there at running back, a really good running back. If the team is able to get it together and piece some things together, they could make this a game. But I don't think that's really going to happen. I think Pittsburgh is going to come out with victory here. I think Russell Wilson's going to have a great game again, lead the Steelers to a victory. I see George Pickens getting a lot of yards in this game. Cleveland's defense tends to bite on the play action very hard and often. And I can see George Pickens getting wide open for some Russell Wilson moon bombs maybe for a touchdown or two. So I'm definitely picking Pittsburgh here. Tim is as well for the first game tonight on Amazon Prime Video at 8:15 for Thursday Night Football. The first 1 o'clock game up on the schedule are the Chiefs at the Panthers. Now, you see this on paper, and if you see it physically as you watch it, you'll probably think to yourself, yes, the Chiefs are probably going to absolutely dismantle the Panthers. But this is maybe another trap game, or it couldn't be. Kansas City's either going to respond by not playing up to their standards because of the loss last week, or we could see what I think is going to happen. Kansas City comes in, absolutely rolls over Carolina because they're upset over the loss last week against the Buffalo Bills. I can see Patrick Mahomes having a huge game here, as well as possibly Kareem Hunt with the running game. Tim and I both picked the Chiefs to win in this one. I think Tim was quoted as saying, let me check here. Tim said 52-6 on this one is going to be the final score. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down here and we'll see if that comes true. He's only been right maybe once or twice so far this year. So the odds aren't looking good for you, Tim, just to let you know. But we'll see. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game on one side of the ball. That's for sure. Minnesota in Chicago coming up next. Tim and I both picking the Vikings to win. The reason I picked the Vikings to win is because basically they're better than the Bears. I don't think Caleb Williams is the right answer right now. Yes, he's a good quarterback. Yes, he can throw the ball. They have weapons on offense all over the place, but they can't get any wins. They can't put wins together. You got to put wins together with the offensive weapons that you have in order to be successful. They're not doing that. They've lost a lot of close ones. Caleb Williams is putting the team in a position to win, but the Bears aren't doing that, is what is winning. So does that come down to the leadership of the quarterback? Does that come down to the coaching? Where's the problem? We'll have to wait and see, I guess. But Tim and I both picking the Vikings here. They're the better put together team. I can see Sam Darnold having a big day here as well, with maybe Justin Jefferson along with him. Next game up is the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Tim and I are both picking the Texans to win here. Texans coming off a win against the Cowboys. Not hard to do, but a win's a win. Joe Mixon coming off a huge night, 3 touchdowns on the night for him against the Cowboys. We could see some of the same here against the struggling Tennessee Titans. I think Houston wins this one. Hopefully CJ Stroud steps up a little more for the Texans at quarterback, gets a few more points on the board for him. But, I mean, does he really have to if the rest of the team is doing it for him? Joe Mixon just carry that offense, and they'll be set. So Detroit taking on Indianapolis in Indianapolis coming up next. Tim's Super Bowl pick this year, the Detroit Lions. Obviously, he's picking them to win. He circled them about 50 times in the text message that he sent me. I'm also picking the Lions to win here. This could be I don't think it's going to be as bad as last week against the Jaguars when the Lions beat them and scored 52 points on them. I think the Lions will put up a lot of points this week, but it's not going to be an onslaught like that. The Colts do have Anthony Richardson back. Looks like he's got that extra spark. Looks like spend some time on the bench, kind of put things into perspective for him. And hopefully he continues to progress for the Colts. But I don't think they can do enough to get it done against the Lions. They're tough to beat right now. Next game up, the New England Patriots coming up against the Miami Dolphins. This is in Miami. Tim and I are both picking the Dolphins to win. So far, Tim and I both have the same games through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. So it's kind of like that through the whole way. We do have some different. So We will get to those eventually. I promise. We didn't pick all of the same games. But Miami Dolphins, I definitely see victorious here. They have way more weapons than New England. New England's got a decent team. Their defense is all right. Drake May's doing well. Their receivers are stepping up. They don't really have that number one go-to big-time, big-name wide receiver on their team. A lot of what you would call secondary receivers, slot receivers, nothing like a Justin Jefferson or an Terry McLaurin or something along those lines. But the Patriots can get it done, and this is a divisional matchup, but I think the Dolphins are too much here. I think they actually will have a decent game if they can get that run game going with Achane and then hook up with Tyreek Hill and Tua prevents turnovers and plays smart. I think the Dolphins could come away with victory here. This one could be a close one, though. I see this one. This one could be a close one in points. It might come down to the wire. The next game up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New York Giants. Another struggling team in the New York Giants. Bottom of the NFC East and just another team that doesn't seem to know how to get it together. They're in the top 5 right now for the NFL draft, a top 5 pick. That just tells you right there how well the season's going. Baker Mayfield has been pretty much on point this season. I think Tampa Bay may get a weapon back in Mike Evans. I believe he's supposed to return, if not this week, if he hasn't already. So that's a benefit. And the New York Giants give up tons of rushing yards to running backs. The most 3 recent running backs, Barkley, they gave up over 170 yards to Barkley. Najee Harris, I believe, broke 100 yards against the Giants. There's another running back in there, but it's slipping my mind who it was. But anyways, nonetheless, Bucky Irving could have a giant game, pun intended, against the New York Giants. And me and Tim are both picking the Buccaneers here to win this game. The next game up, it's Dallas week in Washington, and they take on the Cowboys. Dallas at Washington. Tim and I are both picking the Commanders here. This is kind of a no-brainer at this point of the season. The Cowboys have fallen apart. I think there's a competition going for who's the worst team, the Jets or the Cowboys, organization-wise. In my opinion, I think the Cowboys are winning that race. Cowboys have Cooper Rush under center. Now, he's no Dak Prescott, but he can get the job done. He can throw the ball. It's their running game, and they say this week in, week out. That running game is horrendous. They can't get it going. If you can't get the running game going, how are you going to win a football game? You got to run the ball in order to be able to pass the ball. And if you can't run the ball, they're just going to stack against the pass against you. So I'm definitely picking Washington here to win, and so is Tim. I think Jaden Daniels could have a big game here. And I see Brian Robinson having a decent game as well, rushing-wise. They got to get Terry McLaurin more involved this game. They didn't get him involved against Philadelphia. He had 1 reception for 10 yards on that game. The cornerback that was covering McLaurin through the whole game did a very, very good job of preventing the Commanders getting him the ball. That's got to change. You need to get your top receiver involved in the game in order to get the passing game going. I'm okay with a little dump offs, to Eckler here and there, the curl routes to Zach Ertz, but you got to go deep every now and then, and you got to get some deep balls out to your top receiver. You do that and get your run game going, Commanders come out with the victory here. Next up is San Francisco at Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders. Another game Tim and I both picked the same. We both picked the Broncos to win. Tim is not a Bo Nix fan. He actually said, I don't like this because I'm picking Bo Nix, but I'm picking them to beat the Raiders. This would be the game that he picks Bo Nix to actually win a game, and Bo Nix doesn't perform how he's expected to. But Bo Nix is coming off a big game. He had a great game last week. I think the same will happen this week with the Raiders. I think he's finally found out, the formula and the method over there in Denver, and he's going to be successful against the Raiders coming up. Tim and I both picked the Broncos. Plus, those Broncos receivers are starting to develop like a rapport with Nix, and they look good. Cortland Sutton's looking great. So we'll see how that works out for him. The 49ers at the Packers is up next. This is the first game Tim and I both picked different. This game's in Lambeau. Tim picks Green Bay to win here. I'm guessing mostly because he's a huge Jordan Love fan. He's been on that train since the beginning of the season. I'm picking San Francisco, though, because while they have been a little bit of a disappointment this year, all their wins were coming against, lower-ranked teams in their division. I think this is a good game they can step up and do well at and beat a decent team on the road and kind of reestablish themselves in the NFL and in their division. Christian McCaffrey is back. Remember, they still have Brock Purdy under center. They're a little depleted at wide receiver, but the receivers that have stepped up have been doing a great job. Still got George Kittle in there. You still have a great defense with Fred Warner leading the way. There's no reason the 49ers can't win this game unless they shoot themselves in the foot. But I am picking the 49ers. Tim is picking the Green Bay Packers. Another game coming up that we have different is the next game on the list here. Arizona Cardinals taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. I'm not sure why Tim picked Seattle, maybe because they're coming off a great win last week against the 49ers, last-minute win, all thanks to Geno Smith. But I don't think it happens here again. Arizona is, I think, is the better team right now playing. And even though it's in Seattle, I see Arizona coming away with a win here. Kyler Murray stepping up once again. James Conner running the ball, hard-nosed running, getting it done. I see the Cardinals coming away with a victory here. Tim's picking the Seattle Seahawks. The next game up, Sunday Night Football, is Philadelphia Eagles versus the Los Angeles Rams. Tim and I are both picking the Eagles here to win. They're atop the NFC East. They have everything going right for them right now. All of their offensive players are clicking right now. They're rolling. The defense is looking decent. Got a big win against a tough Commanders team last week. And while the Los Angeles Rams aren't an easy team by any means to beat, I don't think they get the victory here over Philadelphia. Even though it's in Los Angeles, I think Philadelphia comes away with a win here. They're just too strong of a team right now. As for the Monday night game, Tim and I both picked different. Tim has the Baltimore Ravens beating the Los Angeles Chargers. I liked what the Chargers did last week. Justin Herbert looked really good. Cincinnati is a decent defense, and he was carving them apart. And Cincinnati just fell apart on them through the rest of the game, and Justin Herbert stepped up, never made mistakes, played excellent. The defense is really rolling right now for the Chargers. The Baltimore defense is struggling. Their secondary is still struggling. They struggled against the Steelers last week and weren't able to get a win. The Steelers have a really great defense, and so do the Chargers. So I think we see kind of the same here as you did with the Pittsburgh Ravens game last week, a close one, and the Chargers come out on top. Tim has the Ravens coming out on top. So as for points-wise, we're picking tiebreaker here. Tim has the game going off at 45 points, and I have the game points totaled at 46 points. Yes, I'm going to do that to you, Tim, because you're not here and you can't give me grief for it. So, yes, I'm picking a point above you, Price is Right style. And Tim is claiming that the Ravens will win by 20. Definitely don't think that's going to happen, but, that's his prediction. So we'll write it down here so that way when he's wrong, we can tell him. So those are your picks for the week here coming up, week 12. We will have Tim back on next week, and we'll go over week 12, and then we'll get into week 13. Man, I can't believe we're in week 13 already. That's insane. It's so hard to believe that it's already that far in the National Football League. I remember just talking to Tim a couple weeks ago and saying, it's only week 6, but here we are, week 12. It's going to be a good one.
If you'd like to be featured on the Coach's Corner with Andy, email coach at 921thegoat.com.